So, it's time for my big project thing that I've been planning for, I want to say a few years, more or less, just a lengthy period of time, per se, if that makes sense. Probably because, how it matters is the fact that my video game collection is quite large. If you've seen my video that I posted, yeah, it was yesterday actually, about how big my collection has been getting and will continue to grow. It will continue to grow, by the way. Yeah, it's pretty clear I love collecting things. I especially love collecting video games. Like I absolutely love just having more and more games to play. Which, by the way, before I actually start this video, I'm going to have to say something for the sheer hilarity. Like, I actually do not take people who claim to be professional video game critics seriously. When, once you realize that all they do is just repeat what everyone says, either pessimistic or, positive for the sake of being positive and praising or, bashing the most, praised or hated things of all time. You lose all credibility with me. Like, there are a lot of pessimistic critics out there who, they claim to be professional critics, but in actuality, they're frauds. Considering that they just repeat what everyone else says, just for the sake of, what, to gain some kind of notoriety. Yeah, no, dude. Plus, help matters with my counter-argument is the fact that, I actually acknowledge this thing that a lot of people tend to ignore. A lot of, pessimistic, quote-unquote, professional game critics tend to ignore. It's this little thing called variety. Look it up at some point, by the way. Yeah, I had to make that joke. Speaking of that, by the way, I'm not going to apologize for any of my, no, not even any of my opinions, but also my actual legitimate criticisms. Because, like I said earlier, so many people, are afraid to bash the most praise things out there, or even praise the most bash things out there. I'm all about taking chances, which is something, again, that a lot of quote-unquote professional critics don't seem to understand. They just want the game some kind of notoriety or social brownie points, or both, really. And plus, if you're, leaving hate comments on my video, it just begs the question, are you just watching my video to hate on my opinions? So, if I see any, troll comments or hate comments, I will just block you and erase your comments. Boom. Yeah, so there's that. Not going in any particular order here, but I'm going to cover, again, not every game in my collection, and right now only physical releases, because if I covered physicals and digitals, we would be here for, hours. So, I'm also going to be talking about, slightly talking about games that I've started but haven't completed yet, because, if I gave a full opinion on a game I haven't, actually completed yet, that'd be hypocritical on my part. So what would that say about me, you know what I mean? More or less just me, shining some light on some obscure gems, is what I'm trying to say. And also point out some little bits of neat trivia. Let's see, where should I start? I actually don't know where to start. I do have, a lot of games. Should I start with fascinating facts about certain games? There goes my watch. Let's see. I guess I can start with this. This is one of the two games that are like this. Tak 2: The Staff of Dreams for Game Boy Advance is a game that I've actually been getting back into. It's seen a resurgence for me. In the way that, yes, I have nostalgic memories about it, but I'm not, nostalgia blind. Another reason that I'm getting back into it is because it was a game that me and my brother played a lot when we were kids. We played the crap out of this. We could never beat it as kids. It was one of those games, one of those games we had a hard time making a lot of progress in as a kid, but, considering that we're both older, I'm pretty sure I'll be making a lot more progress in this game as, a full-fledged adult. So just point that out ahead of time. And if we're talking about games that my brother directly inspired me to get into, where is it? Let's see, where is it? Um, there it is. I was like, what? But I've actually been experimenting and giving the Assassin's Creed franchise a try. Like, he's just like my brother just inspired me to get into it. I'm also reading the Assassin's Creed novelization off camera as well. It's more or less an adaptation of the first game. So I am essentially reading that as reference material before I actually get into the meat and potatoes of the actual game. Another series that he's inspiring me to get into is the Prince of Persia series, which, I hope I get the details right, but one of the Prince of Persia games was actually turned into the first Assassin's Creed game. I hope I got all those details right. I have to rewatch the Did You Know Gaming video on Prince of Persia again at some point. Let's see. I also happen to stumble upon either random games or random obscure franchises by pure happenstance, it seems. Like, I don't know why. Is anyone else like that? Speaking of people inspiring me to get into certain games and or certain franchises, I was never a big fan of Rocket Power, and I don't think a lot of people were, probably because it was mostly just 90s pandering, let's be honest. But Keybabe Blocks, I think that's how you pronounce his username, actually unintentionally, believe it or not, because he didn't really like the game that much, unintentionally inspired me to get my own copy of the game. I'm not even kidding, like, yeah, I can understand that, you know, like, Rocket Power is very, very dated and stuff, absolutely, but, like, the actual game itself is really, really unique. Like, it's not even a traditional side-scrolling platform. Like, it actually incorporates some mechanics of sports. Like, you can actually grind on rails. And no, not like, you know, in Sonic Adventure 2, but, like, you can actually switch between a skateboard or skates on the fly. Like, it's actually pretty cool. It's pretty accurate controls, too, actually, I might as well add. It's a very, very lengthy game as well. Not as lengthy as Chain of Memories, but a little bit close to that length, which, by the way, side note, play the game in one run because it has a password system. Man, never incorporate a password system for a game that's that long. Also, I think I pointed this out before. Yes, I have, but for those who haven't heard it in my recent video, Dream Scheme has really, really impressive frame-by-frame animation, even for GBA standards. Like, it's actually really impressive. Cave Story 3D was the very first physical release of Cave Story in general. It's a graphical overhaul of Cave Story. It also has a brand new soundtrack, which I can't remember who did the soundtrack for the 3D version. But I also wanted to point this out because its rarity is a very, very strange beast. Okay, so occasionally the cartridge itself can be either common or uncommon. If it's complete in box, it's either uncommon or rare. If it's factory sealed, it's very rare, or it's either rare or very rare. But if it's factory sealed with the holographic sleeve, it's one of the rarest things out there. No, I don't know why. Yeah, it's really, really strange. As the first physical version of Cave Story in general, though, it's pretty cool, although it's something that I actually have a hard time actually playing because the game is super zoomed out. And keep in mind, my vision is absolute suck. So there's that. Let's see. What else should I talk about in this video? The SpongeBob Square... There it goes. The SpongeBob SquarePants movie game for Game Boy Advance, which is actually... It's not just a great game, but it's actually one of the best-selling Game Boy Advance and SpongeBob games by extension. There goes my watch. But yeah, like, I never actually knew that. That's pretty cool. And yes, the sprite work in that game is really, really fantastic. Like, it's Wario Land 4 tier level. Like, it's really good. And yes, it uses a password system. Keep people surprised because, again, Nickelodeon cheaped out on, you know, actually using a save system for a lot of their older games, which is kind of stupid. Let's see. I decided to get this because I just kind of felt like it, I guess, but... Wow, camera, you are just being awful today, aren't you? Iron Man Exo Malware and the Heavy Metal is a game that I've always wanted to try. And I actually did try it off camera a few days ago, actually. If I had to explain for those of you who are curious and or those of you who've never heard of it before, I kind of compare it to either Earthworm Jim or Mega Man, or maybe even a combination of both, because you do what's called run and gunning, you know, like you run and gun down foes. It's pretty cool in that regard. Another reason I want to point out is because, specifically on the character selection screen for Iron Man or Exo Monoware, it's very, very stilted, but it is noticeable once you realize it. Their character models, they're kind of sprites, but they're also kind of 3D models. Think of the exact same thing that Donkey Kong Country did. Like, they kind of digitized models, if that makes sense. No, digitized 3D images into sprites. For Game Boy Advance standards, it's actually pretty impressive, graphically especially. Another instance of a game that did something very similar, although it was it was kind of sort of not really 3D, is the Game Boy's only FPS game, if I remember, that being Faceball 2000. Yeah, it's kind of sort of not really actual 3D. Look it up yourself. It was also on the Super Nintendo. It was also a game that was originally released as Mini Maze. And Mini Maze is a Atari ST game, if I'm not mistaken, which I think was also originally an arcade game before that. Yeah, as you can tell by my commentary, I've been doing a lot of research on video game history in general. I actually started, I'm halfway through the book, The Ultimate History of Video Games, which it's outdated because I think that book came out in either 2001 or 2011 or something like that. So there's a lot more information that needs to be fetched. Let's see. Well, not like a game cartridge, just like, you know, a game in general. I'm pointing this out ahead of time. Referring specifically to Super Mario Bros., the game, not the Game & Watch itself, I can respect its historical significance, pardon me, as a very important game in, you know, gaming history, absolutely. But, like, it's not the best thing ever. Like, a lot of people say that it's the best thing ever, like it's probably one of the most important games that you must play before you die, but no, it just kind of exists. Like, I understand its historical relevance, absolutely, but it's not the best thing ever. It's very, very by the numbers. Like, it's, like, nowadays especially, it's not a big deal anymore. And also, I want to just give my opinion on it, even though I've never played it, but I can still, you know, just give my opinion for right now. Super Mario 64 is the exact same thing. It's often revered for being innovative and influential, but it's just okay. Like, there's not much, it's not really that special in hindsight once you realize that. No, I'm not saying that it has no meaning, it's just like, it's not a big deal anymore. Like, it was a big deal back then, you know, it started the whole boom of the 3D platformer genre, but, like, it's not important anymore. Especially in hindsight, because Super Mario Odyssey exists. And that's a much better game. Which, yes, that is a game that I do have. I've actually been having a lot of fun with Odyssey, in the meantime, off camera. And proof that I can bash my own nostalgia memories. The cartridge that I've had since 2004. The SpongeBob SquarePants Double Pack, which contains Super Sponge and Revenge of the Flying Dutchman. Yes, the knockback in Super Sponge is really, really weird. It's very disjointed. Like, the physics are really, really bad. The game isn't bad, it's just the physics in general, like, not the controls, but like the knockback physics are really, really bad. If there's a game that I feel is disjointed, like, as a game in general, Revenge of the Flying Dutchman. It's a game that I did grow up with, and looking back on my own childhood memories and, you know, not being nostalgia blind or biased, I can see why I didn't really make that much progress in the game. It can be kind of tedious. Like, the backtracking is really, really annoying and vexing on the mind. And the graphical stuff was pretty cool too. Like, I don't know why, but Spongy himself was a 2D sprite, whereas like all of his characters were sprite / 3D model hybrids for whatever reason. No, I don't know why. Yes, it was weird. Let's see. What else should I talk about? I think I'll talk about a few more games and I'll wrap up this video because I'm already wasting everyone's time enough as it is. I'll pick a few more games. Let's see. Why do we keep saying "let's see" so much in my videos? I'm not entirely sure why. Let's see. Oh, I already said that. Oh, quick side note real quick before I mention games I actually have some more things that I have something to talk about. The reason why my copy of Lights Camera Action for Nintendo DS is a PAL copy is because NTSC versions of the game are very, very expensive and very, very scarce. I don't really know why, but that's the case, and that also applies to the GBA version by extension. Just pointing that out ahead of time. It's a game that I will be getting to. Referring to the games I'm going to be talking about, pardon me, it's just me talking to myself on camera. Yeah, 4 more games. I might do a part 2, so I don't, like I said, so I don't waste everyone's time, because that'd be very, very annoying. Very, very annoying. Technically, this more or less is a joke as opposed to like an actual criticism, but more or less, actually, though, an actual criticism at the exact same time. It still is humorous to me that the Invincible Iron Man was seen as garbage when it first came out. Like, you could buy it for like $2, whereas nowadays it's $79.99, and people only want it not because, and it actually is a good game, but they want it just for its value. That's just funny to me. That is hilarious. It can be more or less described as a Mega Man inspired game. I'm not gonna call it a Mega Man clone because that's really stupid. That is really, really stupid in hindsight. Come on, please don't do that, guys. Batman the Brave and the Bold. This is a game that I've actually... It's not something that I've always wanted to play, but something that I became more and more curious about as time went on. Like, I actually looked up some gameplay and screenshots, and this is actually coming from someone who was never really a Batman fan in the first place. So that just proves that, I can branch out and not be a hypocrite. Which is something that, again, I see a lot of people ignore. Like, this thing called variety, guys. Look it up. It's a very, very fun game. It controls and plays kind of identically to Thor God Thunder for DS, the DS version of the game specifically. But it mixes it up by having different playable characters. And they all have unique movesets and mechanics that are unique to them. It's a really fun game. Like, and I'd imagine there's a lot of them, but if you're a Batman fan, and I'd imagine there's a lot of people who have a DS, give this game a go. It's really, really good. It also has a soundtrack composed by Jake Kaufman, so that in of itself is always a yes, because, you don't question the brilliance that is Jake Kaufman. And, although I doubt he's gonna see it, the reason that I got back into the Frogger franchise, it's literally because of Nitro Rad. Like, again, openly speaking as a hypocrite, back in the day. Like, back in the day, I was too hypocritical and never even bothered to branch out and try any of these adventure / story-driven Frogger games. But no, like, Helmet Chaos is probably going to be my go-to Frogger adventure game for a long time. Like, I especially love, the character dynamics and how, like, it is a linear trek, like Nitro Rad said, but, like, not every single time you play the game is going to be the exact same way. Like, again, referring to Nitro Rad's video, like, he ended up playing through a beach area and a crocodile-infested orchard, and then he got eaten by a whale and had to find his way out. No, eaten by a fish and had to find his way out. But on his second playthrough, none of that actually happened. You can choose how the story plays out. That's pretty cool. That's really cool. I would say pretty cool all of a sudden. Really awesome game. Strangely enough, it was also on the PSP. Yeah, that's interesting in the way that the PSP and the DS were kind of made to compete with one another. And that also applied to the 3DS and the Vita. So that's contradictory, I guess. It's hilarious once you realize that. We got 2 more games to talk about here. Let's do this. And they're both based on cartoons, and they're both very lively and full of personality. Phineas and Ferb Quest for Cool Stuff is one of the most entertaining games I have ever played. I always play the 3DS version, although I do have the DS version, yes, and yes, I've been playing that off camera for context, but I stopped playing it because the DS version lacks voice acting at all. Why? That excuse fades in the mud automatically because Across Second Dimension for DS was perfectly fine with voice acting. What happened? Jokes aside, though, this is essentially a literal portable version of the console version, which, yes, it was on PS3, 360, Wii and Wii U, as well as, 3DS and DS. Anyone else call that era, what I used to call the excessive port era? But more or less, as time has gone on, I don't see it as excessive, more or less, as accessible, like because it gives more people an opportunity to try that game on whatever system they have. But that aside, back to the actual positives, it's so well written, it's very lively, the character interactions are very on form, on model. It really does feel like it's a playable episode of Phineas and Ferb, and that's why it's really sad that not a lot of people actually gave this game a chance. Probably because people bashed it for being too cute and cartoony, and they were off playing Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto. Seriously, again, like Nitro Rad said in his 40 Winks review, not all games have to be edgy and macho and gory and violent to appeal to adults. Especially speaking as myself here, because, if you're just poisoning yourself with violence and, all this negative stuff, you're poisoning yourself and you're letting go of your childhood innocence. So that's on you, if you hold on to your childhood memories, your childhood innocence, you're going to live the rest of your life virtuously. But sorry about that, that's just the philosopher in me speaking. But, back to the game. It's very lively, it's very animated, and the soundtrack is also one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. Still trying to find who the composer was for that soundtrack. And pretty much all of those and more apply to True for Square for DS. Tomoshi Sato is a wonderful composer who more people should listen to his soundtracks. He's done a lot of SpongeBob stuff. Anything that was done by Altron. Every single Altron game, from what I can tell, Tomoshi Sato composed a soundtrack for. This is not the only thing that he's worked on. He worked on Atlantis Square Pantis, GBA, and DS, Drawn to Life SpongeBob Edition for DS, and the first 3 Phineas and Ferb games, well, specifically Phineas and Ferb Try Again, and the DS version of Across Second Dimension. He's done a lot of stuff, is what I'm trying to say, but, my favorite things about the game, aside from the soundtrack, is, how SpongeBob controls in this game. His animations convey so much, and I don't know if I call it combat, but more or less the rock, paper, scissors combat system is pretty on point, too. You can either attack by shooting, apparently they call it a puck, it's this pink sphere thing. You can either shoot a projectile attack, whack like a hammer, or spin around Crash Bandicoot style, kind of. It's it's really engaging, for a kind of makeshift combat system. But one of my other absolute favorite things, not just the mechanics, but the overall graphical presentation. The worlds look very vibrant and colorful, which is, intentional, because it's SpongeBob we're talking about here. It's SpongeBob Millicent SquarePants we're talking about here, one of the most positive and optimistic characters of all time here. And anyone who loves SpongeBob, I definitely recommend the DS version of this game. Like, I say specifically the DS version because the console version, like, it's kind of confused, and not to mention, spoilers, the soundtrack is recycled verbatim from Battle for Bikini Bottom, which is going to take people out of that experience. So yeah, I thought I'd talk about the games that I really do legitimately care about. Like, this is why a lot of people who claim to be gamers need to stop being hypocritical and actually branch out and, add a lot more variety to their game collections. Because, like, if you're just playing, like again, if I just played indie or licensed games and never gave AAA games a chance, what would that say about me? But, it works the other way around, too. Like, so many people who claim to be gamers but really aren't and just play the big name games, like, they're just as hypocritical. Like, I do play AAA games in my spare time as well, but, like, I just find myself more invested in games based off of cartoons or movies. Again, it's not like I don't care about... Well, I do not care about AAA games that much, but it's not like I have any ill will or disrespect towards them or anything like that. It's just, more or less me wanting to be passionate about the things that I care about. And in the end, it's just my opinion, although there were some factual statements in there, I will admit. Not a lot, but just some. So hopefully I clarified myself. I just wanted to, talk about some of the things that I'm truly passionate about. So with that being said, Sir Bop-A-Lot, signing out.